Chapter 1. The story starts with a prisoner named Lee Seon-ho, identified as prisoner number 1334, being beaten by another prisoner, number 2251. As the attacker punches Seon-ho in the face, he cheers and praises himself for landing a clean hit. While Seon-ho collapses and struggles to rise, the crowd loudly supports prisoner 2251. Despite Seon-ho's efforts, 2251 gives him no respite, kicking him in the face and continuing the assault. He angrily accuses Seon-ho of taking his own parents' lives, fueling his rage. Meanwhile, two officers notice the fight and one of them suggests stopping it, but the senior officer advises against interference. When the junior officer questions who will intervene, the senior mentions an old man, the absolute law of the prison. The old man soon arrives at the scene with his bodyguard, prisoner number 5103, and calmly orders the fight to stop. Intimidated, the crowd obeys. Seon-ho, however, charges at the old man in anger, but the bodyguard intercepts, grabbing Seon-ho's hair mid-air and slamming his face into the ground. Seon-ho, bleeding and shocked, realizes the bodyguard's immense strength. The old man taunts Seon-ho for breaking the rules and then turns to the officers, asking if the prisoner will face punishment for his actions. When the officers agree, they confirm that Seon-ho will be sent to the punishment room. Shortly after, Seon-ho is thrown into the room, accused of causing constant trouble in the prison. As the officers shut the door, they inform him that he will clean the incinerator during exercise time the next day. Lying on the ground and panting, Seon-ho overhears the junior officer asking about the old man's identity. The senior officer explains that the old man is the ultimate authority in the prison, leaving the junior officer stunned. When he asks if the warden knows about this, the senior officer reveals that even the warden serves the old man, deepening the junior officer's shock as he grasps the extent of the old man's power. The senior officer warns him to heed the old man's commands, describing him as someone who could move the world with a single finger. Meanwhile, the old man summons his bodyguard, Mule, prisoner number 5103, and orders him to proceed with an operation against Seon-ho. Mule acknowledges the order without hesitation. The next day, as Seon-ho cleans the incinerator casually, a prisoner suddenly kicks him from behind. The force of the attack sends Seon-ho flying directly into the incinerator. Without giving him any chance to escape, the prisoner ignites the materials inside, ignoring Seon-ho's attempts to stop him. The fire quickly spreads through the room, engulfing Seon-ho in moments. As he burns alive, Seon-ho deeply regrets ever seeking help from Gi Sung-soo. 12 years earlier, Seon-ho stands on the street, surrounded by classmates. When one of them, Chang-sik, approaches, Seon-ho questions his behavior, but Chang-sik dismisses him and mocks his reliance on academics. As Seon-ho tells Chang-sik to stop being a bully, Chang-sik grows angry and punches him. The punches continue until a sudden voice interrupts them. Both Chang-sik and Seon-ho turn toward the sound and see Gi Sung-soo standing confidently. Sung-soo questions Chang-sik's behavior, and Seon-ho feels relieved, knowing Sung-soo, grandson of the Key Group's chairman, has come to help. Seon-ho views Sung-soo as a kind person who always supports the weak, while Chang-sik, frustrated, orders his friends to leave with him. After they depart, Sung-soo asks if Seon-ho is okay, and Seon-ho expresses gratitude for the help. From that day, the two become close friends. However, Chang-sik grows increasingly irritated whenever he sees them laughing and talking together. One evening, Seon-ho returns home and is immediately greeted by his father, who informs him about the upcoming entrance exam and advises him to focus on studying instead of staying out late. Ignoring his father's words, Seon-ho continues walking toward his room upstairs. Frustrated, his father raises his voice, yelling after him, but Seon-ho still does not respond and keeps climbing the stairs. Once in his room, Seon-ho sits on his bed, exhausted, and notices a family photo on the table. Seeing the picture, he becomes emotional as memories of his late mother, who passed away when he was young, flood his mind. Time passes, and the result day for Hankook University arrives. Sung-soo enthusiastically encourages Seon-ho to open the website, confident that he has passed. Though hesitant at first, Seon-ho eventually musters the courage to check his results. As Sung-soo predicted, Seon-ho passes the entrance exam and secures admission to Kook University. Overjoyed, Seon-ho agrees when Sung-soo suggests they celebrate the achievement. Before leaving, Seon-ho informs his father that he will return in a few hours. However, his father stops him and asks about the results. With confidence, Seon-ho announces that he passed. Delighted, his father hands him some money and urges him to enjoy a delicious meal with Sung-soo. Thanking him, Seon-ho assures his father he will return soon. Proud of Seon-ho's success, his father watches them leave. Outside, Seon-ho grows tense, sharing his concerns with Sung-soo about leaving his father once he moves into the college dormitory. Surprised, Sung-soo asks if Seon-ho actually likes his father. Seon-ho admits that he used to hate him, blaming him for his mother's death, but explains that he no longer feels that way. He now understands that his mother passed away due to an illness, not because of his father. Hearing this, Sung-soo advises Seon-ho to be honest with his father about his feelings and plans, assuring him that his father will understand and support his decision to live in the dormitory. When Seon-ho returns home, he calls out to his father, who is busy grilling meat. As his father turns to look at him, Seon-ho hesitates briefly before suggesting they drink together that evening. His father agrees, and the two sit down to share drinks while enjoying the meat his father prepared. As they toast their drinks, Seon-ho informs his father that he will move to the dorm next week. His father agrees and advises him to eat well. Seon-ho promises to succeed and earn a lot of money, reassuring his father of his determination. His father, pleased, expresses his only wish, that Seon-ho stays healthy and avoids getting sick like his mother. Seon-ho, shocked and saddened by his father's words, agrees to his request. The next day, Seon-ho meets Sung-soo at a dessert cafe and thanks him, explaining that he resolved all misunderstandings with his father the previous night thanks to Sung-soo's advice. As Sung-soo acknowledges this, Seon-ho notices bruises on his face and asks what happened, suspecting he was beaten. Laughing, Sung-soo claims he simply fell that morning, prompting Seon-ho to urge him to be more careful. Seon-ho then hands him a cup, explaining that his father prepared beef bone soup for Sung-soo, advising him to take care of himself. Sung-soo looks at the cup, then abruptly states that he has work to do and leaves, saying the meeting ran longer than expected. Seon-ho bids him goodbye, finding his behavior strange. On his way home, Seon-ho checks his phone and sees a text from his father, reminding him not to eat outside as he has already prepared beef for dinner. Excited, Seon-ho hurries home, failing to notice the cup he gave Sung-soo lying spilled on the ground. When Seon-ho arrives, he calls out to his father, only to freeze in shock as he hears Sung-soo's voice instead, claiming he is late. Looking closer, Seon-ho sees his father lying on the ground in a pool of blood, with Sung-soo standing over him. As Sung-soo turns toward him, Seon-ho's shock turns to horror. He tries to call out for his father but soon realizes he is already gone. Overcome with anger and grief, Seon-ho cries and moves toward Sung-soo, but Chang-sik suddenly appears from behind and kicks him, knocking him down. Chang-sik coldly reveals that Sung-soo killed Seon-ho's father and expresses relief, adding that Sung-soo never truly saw Seon-ho as a friend. As Seon-ho, lying on the ground, crawls towards Sung-soo, Sung-soo laughs and mockingly insists they are indeed friends. When Seon-ho demands to know why he killed his father, Sung-soo responds angrily, claiming it was because his father crossed the line. Chang-sik grabs Seon-ho by the hair and offers him a pill, claiming it will make him feel better. Ignoring Seon-ho's resistance, he forces him to swallow the pill. Meanwhile, Sung-soo makes a call to his uncle, urging him to come to Seon-ho's house and clean up the scene. As the pill begins to take effect, Seon-ho's vision blurs, and Sung-soo expresses his regret, lamenting that they will never have the chance to play together again. Hours later, Seon-ho regains consciousness and finds himself lying on the floor, a knife in his hand. Confused and panicked, he looks up to see his father's lifeless body and screams at him, but there is no response. His attention shifts to the loud banging from outside as police officers demand the door be opened. Moments later, The officers break in and storm the house. Seon-ho, desperate and tearful, shouts that Sung-soo is responsible for his father's death, but the police dismiss his claims. Instead, they arrest him, stating he is a suspect in his father's murder. A few days later, Seon-ho learns from the detective that Sung-soo has a solid alibi, as he claims Seon-ho was under the influence of drugs. The detective further points out that the knife used in the crime had Seon-ho's fingerprints, and neighbors reported frequent arguments between Seon-ho and his father, urging Seon-ho to confess. The detective claims that admitting guilt and seeking forgiveness could potentially reduce his sentence. However, Seon-ho remains adamant, angrily insisting that Sung-soo killed his father. Despite his protests, the court sentences Seon-ho to life imprisonment for the crime. As Seon-ho boards the prison bus, he spots Sung-soo and Chang-sik standing nearby, mockingly waving goodbye and laughing at him. Overcome with rage, Seon-ho smashes the bus window with his forehead, causing it to shatter and leaving him bleeding. The officers restrain him tightly, while Sung-soo calmly watches the scene with a smug expression. When the bus reaches the prison, Seon-ho steps through the main gate. Standing nearby, the old man notices him, silently observing his arrival. Chapter 2. One day, Seon-ho sits quietly in the prison kitchen, lost in thoughts about his father's murder. Suddenly, a prisoner approaches and kicks him in the face without warning. Seon-ho remains calm, sitting back down on the floor, as the prisoner taunts him for allegedly killing his own father, mockingly asking how it felt to commit such a sin. Initially ignoring the remarks, Seon-ho stays silent. However, the prisoner continues, revealing that he himself is a murderer but claims he has never done anything as despicable as Seon-ho's supposed crime. As the prisoner moves closer and sarcastically asks if the experience was thrilling, Seon-ho firmly denies it, surprising the prisoner. Without warning, Seon-ho punches him in the face, knocking him to the ground. Rushing toward him in anger, Seon-ho calls him a psychopath and declares that he is not his father's killer. When Seon-ho gets close enough, the prisoner suddenly laughs and kicks him in the stomach, causing Seon-ho to stumble and cough. The prisoner gets up, grabs Seon-ho by the collar, and begins punching him repeatedly, leaving Seon-ho no room to defend himself. As Seon-ho collapses to the floor, the prisoner starts choking him. Realizing the danger, other prisoners in the kitchen rush to intervene, fearing that the attacker might actually kill Seon-ho. Two prisoners pull the attacker back, while another helps Seon-ho to his feet. However, Seon-ho breaks free of the assistants and charges at the attacker again. Without hesitation, Seon-ho bites the prisoner's shoulder hard, causing him to scream in pain as blood flows from the wound. Officers stationed near the gate hear the commotion and call out to stop the fight. Ignoring their orders, Seon-ho continues his assault, forcing the officers to intervene physically. They strike Seon-ho on the head with a bat, bringing him to a stop. While a senior officer orders his subordinate to escort prisoner number 1334 to the punishment room, he explains that he has something important to attend to. As the senior officer reaches the main gate of the prison, he notices a luxurious car approaching from a distance. Upon its arrival, he steps forward to greet the vehicle's passenger, Chairman Kim Song-din, the boss of the Gumkang gang. The chairman exits the car, handing the officer an envelope, claiming it contains a generous reward for his hospitality. Entering the prison, Chairman Kim proceeds to visit the old man, bowing deeply as a gesture of respect. Gumkang, the old man, looks at him and coldly inquires about the purpose of his visit. Kim Song-din informs him that Gi Musin, the chairman of the Key Group, has passed away. With a calculated tone, he requests permission to take over the Key Group's operations. However, before he can finish, Gumkang sharply interrupts him, warning him to remember his place. The old man, visibly angered, commands Kim Song-din to maintain the status quo and not disturb the delicate balance. Fear flashes across the chairman's face, and he hurriedly agrees, his voice trembling as he promises to comply. When Gumkang's fury intensifies, Kim Song-din is overwhelmed by fear. Dropping to his knees, he begs for forgiveness, apologizing for his audacity. Unmoved, Gumkang orders him to leave, sternly warning him never to repeat such behavior. He reminds Kim Songdin that he is always watching his every move. Thoroughly chastened, the chairman scrambles to obey. As he exits the prison and instructs his driver to leave immediately, he sits in the car, still shaken. Watching his trembling hands, Kim Songdin reflects on Gumkang's intimidating presence, muttering under his breath that the old man is as terrifying as he was when they first met in the underworld. Gumkang, the old man, instructs Mule to bring Seonho to him and make the necessary preparations. Mule agrees and heads to Seonho's cell, where Seonho remains unaware of the old man's intentions. As Seonho peacefully sleeps, he wakes up suddenly from a nightmare where he sees Sungsu taking his father's life. Shortly after, Mule opens the door and orders him to come along. When Seonho questions his identity, Mule ignores him and insists that he follow. Seonho complies and soon finds himself in a hidden library within the prison, which leaves him shocked. The old man greets Seonho, drawing his attention. When Seonho asks who he is, Mule scolds him for his tone and introduces Gumkang as the old man of the prison. Confused, Seonho looks to the old man, who chuckles and tells Mule to conduct a test. Mule grabs Seonho by the hair and pulls him closer to Gumkang. The old man leans in and stares into Seonho's eyes before declaring that Seonho is innocent, as his eyes lack the darkness of a murderer. He asks Seonho to confirm that he did not kill his father and adds that while Seonho's eyes are filled with anger, they do not belong to a killer. Seonho, overwhelmed, punches the floor and cries out, repeatedly denying any involvement in his father's death. As tears fall, the old man smiles slightly and asks if Seonho wishes to take revenge for his father. Seonho, stunned by the question, gathers himself and firmly states that he wants revenge against the man who killed his father. The old man calmly responds that he can help with that, leaving Seonho shocked as he demands to know how. The old man reveals to Seonho that he has been involved in significant events behind the scenes for a long time. He explains that, over the years, he has accumulated many enemies who want him dead, which eventually led to his imprisonment, though he continues his work from within. The old man proposes a deal to Seonho, offering to help him get his revenge if he agrees to do some important tasks for him. Seonho, consumed by anger, declares that he is willing to do anything for his revenge. Hearing this, the old man smiles and tasks Seonho with taking someone's life in prison. Seonho leaves the room, deeply contemplating whether he is capable of killing someone. As he walks through the prison corridors, he begins to reflect on the consequences of devoting his life to the old man for the sake of revenge. He also realizes that, despite his anger, he lacks the actual intent to kill. While lost in thought, prisoner number 2103 notices Seonho and orders his friends to bring him over. The group forces Seonho into an empty room where prisoner 2103 begins slapping him repeatedly. He accuses Seonho of killing his father and deceiving others. As he continues hitting Seonho, the prisoner taunts him by asking how it felt to see his father's dying face filled with pain. Seonho remains silent, prompting the prisoner to mockingly ask if he is mute. Seonho recalls the old man's condition for helping him and is overtaken by a surge of anger. Spotting a sharp wooden stick nearby, Seonho grabs the prisoner by the waist, pushing him to the ground. While the prisoner laughs at first, he freezes in shock upon seeing Seonho holding the sharp stick. Without hesitation, Seonho drives the pointed stick into the prisoner's eye. The prisoner's friends panic and attempt to flee, calling for a guard, but they stop in their tracks when Mule appears and blocks their path, commanding them not to alert anyone. The old man enters the room, observing Seonho with a satisfied laugh. Seonho, tears streaming down his face, asks if he is now qualified and if the old man will fulfill his promise of helping him take revenge. The old man smiles cryptically and tells Seonho that the test has only just begun. Later, Mule takes Seonho to another area and throws him to the ground. Confused and frustrated, Seonho demands to know why. Mule informs him that they will now begin training to ensure Seonho can handle the old man's tasks without difficulty. Ignoring Mule's instructions, Seonho pleads for him to stop hitting him, but Mule insists that harsh training is the most effective method. Without hesitation, Mule begins striking Seon-ho with powerful blows to prepare him for the challenges ahead. Chapter 3. 5 years pass swiftly, and Seon-ho stands confidently before Mule, ready for their usual training session. Charging forward, Seon-ho lands a series of powerful punches on Mule, who struggles momentarily but smiles at his progress. As Seon-ho announces his final blow, Mule effortlessly blocks the attack and counters with a strong punch to Seon-ho's face, knocking him to the ground. Wiping blood off his face, Seon-ho questions how much longer they need to continue the training. Mule replies that the old man will decide when it ends and begins to leave the room. Before exiting, he commands Seon-ho to hide his presence until the old man gives further instructions. Seon-ho agrees, putting on his shirt and reflecting on the 5 years since he accepted the old man's offer. He realizes how much he has grown in that time, both physically and mentally, and notes that the weak Lee Seon-ho no longer exists. However, as he steps out of the room, a prisoner suddenly slaps him across the face. Glaring angrily at the man, Seon-ho listens as the prisoner provokes him, questioning whether he plans to fight back. When Seon-ho raises his voice and asks if the prisoner has a problem with him, the prisoner grows enraged and begins punching him. Seon-ho, remembering Mule's warning to keep his existence hidden, refrains from retaliating and allows himself to be beaten, eventually collapsing to the ground. Later, Seon-ho is thrown into a cell. The officers inform him that, as punishment, he will be responsible for cleaning the incinerator during the training period the next day. Breathing heavily, Seon-ho lies on the ground, painfully aware that he must endure such humiliation to ensure his identity remains concealed until the time is right to seek his revenge. A group of new prisoners arrives at the facility, one of whom laughs boldly at the officers as he enters. Later that night, while the other prisoners are fast asleep, this same prisoner quietly leaves his cell and meets with a senior officer. The officer hands him a knife and a piece of paper containing the location of the old man's room. Examining the sharpness of the blade, the prisoner assures the officer that the job will be done effortlessly. Meanwhile, the old man sleeps peacefully in his room, unaware of the approaching threat. The prisoner sneaks in without difficulty, staring at the old man and mocking the officers for fearing a fragile elder who, in his eyes, is incapable of causing harm. As the prisoner prepares to strike, Seon-ho suddenly appears behind him, startling him. Switching his target, the prisoner lunges at Seon-ho with the knife. Seon-ho narrowly evades the blade aimed at his eye, blocking the attack and countering with a blow to the prisoner's hand. The prisoner screams in pain, dropping the weapon, which Seon-ho quickly seizes before slicing the attacker's neck. The prisoner clutches his throat briefly before collapsing lifelessly to the floor. The commotion wakes the old man, who dismissively calls the prisoner an idiot. As Seon-ho checks on him, the old man rises and praises Seon-ho for his swift and efficient actions. Turning to Mule, the old man commends him for training Seon-ho into a capable fighter. Seon-ho recalls Mule's advice to stay in the old man's room that night, suspecting there might be trouble. When Seon-ho inquires about the attacker's identity, the old man chuckles, labeling the assailant as delusional and overconfident. Standing in front of a mirror, the old man reassures Seon-ho not to worry, remarking that his training is nearly complete. The next day, the old man easily uncovers the officer responsible for aiding the prisoner. When confronted, the officer confesses that Kim Songdin of the Gumkang gang had coerced him. The old man orders the warden to deal with the matter. The warden reports that Officer Kim has gone missing since the previous night, likely trying to escape punishment. Realizing his fate, the officer begins begging for mercy, but the old man remains unmoved. He instructs the warden to finish things quickly. The warden complies, taking the officer's life and disposing of his body in the incinerator. Later, the old man tasks Mule with administering Seon-ho's final test. Mule brings Seon-ho to the incinerator room, where a body wearing prisoner number 1334's shirt lies motionless. Shocked and confused, Seon-ho listens as Mule explains that this is his last test. Mule ignites a lighter, wishing Seon-ho luck and declaring that success will allow him to take his revenge. Without hesitation, Mule throws the lighter into the room, locking Seon-ho inside as flames begin to spread. Seonho notices a hidden tunnel in the floor and spots a tool nearby. Using it, he removes the cover with force, realizing that survival is part of the test. Meanwhile, the warden reports that prisoner number 1334 was burned alive, as the body wearing the uniform matches the description. Crawling through the tunnel, Seonho struggles to breathe, overwhelmed by the smoke. Panting heavily, he realizes he must push forward quickly if he wants to escape. Despite the suffocating environment, he forces himself to move, determined to survive and reach the surface. Seonho crawls through the tunnel, struggling for air, and eventually notices a faint light in the distance. Pushing himself forward with what little strength remains, he reaches the source and extends his hand through the earth. A young man outside grabs it and pulls him out. Breathing heavily, Seonho looks at the man and, still disoriented, asks if he is one of the old man's people. The man smiles and introduces himself as Babaira before handing Seonho a smartphone, explaining that the old man is on the line. Seonho, confused but attentive, takes the phone and listens as the old man informs him that prisoner number 1334, Lee Seonho, is now officially considered dead. The old man calmly tells him that from this moment, he will be known as Mujin. He reminds Mujin to stay focused on the purpose for which he was freed and urges him to remember the mission ahead. Seonho listens carefully and agrees without hesitation before ending the call. Chapter 4. Babaira provides Mujin with a new set of clothes and tells him to get ready, noting that they are currently at the top of a mountain. As Babaira and Mujin begin walking, Babaira explains that his role was simply to facilitate Mujin's call with the old man. Encouraging Mujin to relax, Babaira mentions they're the same age and confesses that he's not skilled in fighting, often choosing to avoid conflicts altogether. Suddenly, Babaira gestures toward a man standing near a car a short distance away, pointing out that they've arrived at their destination. Mujin, upon seeing the man, asks about his identity, clearly taken aback. The man, visibly annoyed, turns to Babaira and demands to know why it took so long for him to arrive. Eyeing Mujin, he remarks that this must be the kid sent by the old man for the job. Mujin repeats his question about the man's identity, prompting Babaira to introduce him as Jang Deoksu, someone who will assist Mujin in battles since Babaira himself is unreliable in fights. Mujin greets Deoksu politely and introduces himself. Meanwhile, Babaira walks toward the car, urging them to hurry since they are already behind schedule. Deoksu, however, interrupts, instructing Babaira to wait. Pointing at Mujin, he insists on testing the kid's strength before working together. Taking off his jacket, Deoksu challenges Mujin to prove himself. Without warning, Deoksu charges at Mujin and lands a punch to his stomach, causing him to struggle in pain. As Mujin struggles to keep standing, he realizes that Deoksu is far stronger than he anticipated. Despite this, Mujin uses his speed to dodge Deoksu's relentless attacks, frustrating Deoksu, who mocks him for refusing to fight back. Determined to prove himself, Mujin recalls his 5 years of rigorous training with Mule in prison and regains his confidence. When Deoksu attempts a direct punch to Mujin's face, Mujin skillfully sidesteps, catching Deoksu off guard. Before Deoksu can react, Mujin counters with a swift punch to his face, sending him crashing to the ground. Babaira watches the fight unfold, noting that Mujin had the upper hand from the beginning. As Deoksu lies on the ground, Mujin asks if he's ready to continue. Laughing, Deoksu picks himself up, praising Mujin's strength and patting him on the back. Admitting he underestimated Mujin, Deoksu compliments him for being far more powerful than expected. Babaira, unimpressed by Deoksu's attempt to appear unfazed, tells him to stop pretending to be cool after losing and urges them to move on. The group soon arrives at a building, where Mujin, unfamiliar with the place, questions its purpose. Babaira cryptically assures him that simply changing his name isn't enough and asks Mujin to trust the process. As they enter, they're greeted by a woman named Mahayan, who welcomes Babaira warmly. Babaira immediately inquires about Dr. Park's whereabouts, and moments later, the doctor emerges from a room, holding a bottle. Dr. Park, addressing their lateness, reveals that he had been waiting for their arrival to open the bottle. However, Babaira accuses him of already being drunk, which the doctor denies, though his behavior suggests otherwise. Ignoring their exchange, Mujin asks Babaira who the doctor is. Babaira introduces Dr. Park as the best plastic surgeon he knows, someone highly regarded for his exceptional skills and widely renowned for his abilities, earning the nickname Gold Hand. Despite this glowing introduction, Mujin hesitates, expressing concerns about Dr. Park's drunken state and questioning whether it's truly necessary to perform the surgery that very day. Babaira reassures him, stressing the urgency of the situation and insisting that the procedure must take place immediately, emphasizing that this opportunity cannot be delayed and that it's critical for their plans to move forward without any further setbacks. The doctor approaches Mujin, placing a firm hand on his shoulder and assuring him to trust in his skills, claiming he is completely sober and ready to proceed. Before Mujin can respond, his attention is drawn to the television in the room, where a news report captures his focus. A reporter details the case of Lee Xianho's death in prison, describing him as the man responsible for taking his father's life. The report portrays Lee Xianho as arrogant and unapologetic for his sins, adding that he frequently engaged in disputes with fellow inmates before ultimately losing his life in what was officially deemed an accident. As Mujin watches silently, Dr. Park turns to him and remarks that the world now believes Lee Xianho is no more. With a faint smile, the doctor asks if Mujin is ready to be reborn as a completely new person, free from his former identity. Mujin hesitates briefly, grappling with the weight of his decision, but ultimately nods in agreement. Dr. Park takes this as confirmation and instructs a nurse to begin preparations for the surgery. Elsewhere, Changsik informs Sungsu about the death of Lee Xianho, relaying the news with a mocking laugh. Changsik seems to find amusement in the situation, but Sungsu dismisses him sharply, telling him to stop wasting time on trivial matters. 6 months pass, and Mujin thanks Dr. Park and Nurse Kim for their work, expressing his gratitude for the successful surgery. Dr. Park, visibly pleased, looks at Mujin and calls the surgery a masterpiece, praising how he now looks completely different. Babaira, watching from a distance, agrees, noting that Mujin now seems like an entirely different person. Mujin, growing irritated, tells Babaira to stop staring and wasting time, ordering him to move quickly since he has a job to fulfill and cannot afford any delays.